What's up, party people? My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Maybe episode 4 or 5 today. I've got yet another awesome guest. My next guest's name is Amos Ben-Mir. We're going to talk about how he went from chip design to angel investor / inventor. Amos, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on your show, Sunny.
So you are the investor and board director for the Sand Hill Angels. You had a really interesting story around that. What is the Sand Hill Angels? You want to maybe kick us off there, take us into the deep end,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
start?
Well, Sand Hill Angels is a fairly large Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area angel group. It's been around since the year 2000. I ended up joining in early 2014 after I left my last operating role, which was at a startup where I was a founder and it had gotten acquired. And I basically decided it was time to do something else. So I ended up joining in early 2014 and became very active with the group. Joined the board in 2016 and have been part of the leadership team of the group ever since. So it's been now close to 12, maybe going on 13 years. The group itself is comprised primarily of angel investors that are in the Bay Area. Many of them are experienced entrepreneurs like myself that have had exits and are doing this maybe part-time or full-time. Many are actual operators, still either at established companies or operating at startups. The group is pretty diverse in terms of reflecting the diversity in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we do invest about $8 to $10 million a year. We do it through an LLC structure, so we're always one entry on the cap table. And it's a pretty strong group, lots of good members. We source deals from accelerators in the San Francisco Bay Area, like YC, Alchemist, 500 Startups, and a few others. We also have, our members are also very active in sourcing deals. So it's a pretty good group. And we don't focus on any specific sector. I would describe the group as a generalist. We do like to invest in deep tech, of course, AI, and pretty much any sector where there's a compelling business opportunity, and that typically involves some amount of technology. So.
Wow, I mean, what an interesting seat you have, right? I mean, right in the heart of Silicon Valley, where all of the awesome technology comes spiraling out and coming out to the rest of us. So you were on the NS32332 microprocessor team at National Semiconductor back in the early 80s. Take me back there, Amos. What pulled a young engineer towards silicon at that particular moment in computing history?
Well, I went to the Technion, which is Israel's premier technical university. Certainly at the time it was. I think there's a number of really great universities in Israel in addition to the Technion. But I kind of focused on microelectronics and digital communications and a little bit of software. So at the time, in the early 80s, I mean, semiconductors were, it was an industry that was, I guess, already fairly mature, but still in its early life. I'd always had an interest in designing computers, and National Semiconductor had a design center near Tel Aviv, and they were designing 32-bit microprocessors. And at the time, I think we were the first 32-bit processor. Um, so I applied for a job there, and I was hired, and that was the beginning of a long career in semiconductors. Most of it spent on high performance microprocessor design and development, a little bit in communication semiconductors, but really I think I would describe the majority of my career on the engineering side, design and development of products, and mostly processors and memory subsystems for processors. So yeah.
And then you did your degree, you mentioned at the Technion in Israel, right? Before all of this, how did that foundation and that environment kind of shape the way you think about hard engineering problems?
Well, I mean, in general, the university, in my, my take on it was just a good place to get your basic skill set, and really most of the learning comes after that, in my opinion. But the goal is to train you to solve engineering problems and also understand the scientific method in general. So my degree was in double E with a focus on microelectronics, communications, and software. Um, so it's been a while since I've been an academic. So not sure exactly what the state is today, but I'm sure it's a bit different. And when I was at the
Mm,
Technion, entrepreneurship was not that big of a thing. I
hmm.
think fast forward, and again, we're talking about graduating in 1982. Fast forward to 2000s. I mean, entrepreneurship is central almost in any university. So so yeah, it was quite different, and this was before sort of venture capital took off in Israel. Yeah, so my first job actually started in 1983, and it was pre the venture capital era in Israel. So
And then Amos, you spent years as a chip designer before you ever led a team or founded anything. Like, what did those early hands-on years at the transistor level teach you that you still carry today?
well, interesting. I mean, it taught me that engineering is hard, and that to be successful, you have to have a certain level of discipline and a set of standards that you work by. Um, and you need to be able to motivate people. I mean, you know, my first experience was working as an engineer on a team, and then obviously later I moved into both managing and working as an engineer, and then eventually just management roles such as director level and VP, vice president. Uh, but yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I guess that that first experience taught me uh, how to go about designing chips, and yeah, to some extent, it was an experience that I repeated over and over in my career, with different roles and at different levels of complexity as the technology developed over time, and the ability to cram more transistors on a chip. Um, so, um, so it's been a while since I've been in the semiconductor industry. Like I said, I left in 2014, my last operating role, but I've been following it pretty closely. Yeah.
And then Amos, you at Next Gen, right? You were a chief designer on the NX686, which became the guts of the AMD K6. What was that like being, deep in a design that ended up kind of going head to head with
Yeah.
Intel?
Yeah, it was a real challenge. I mean, the early days, you know, were, were really difficult. We were a startup with limited resources, and we were trying to, come out with a competing product with Intel's processor. Um, we finally did achieve a prototype, and based on that prototype, AMD decided to acquire us. We'd actually gone public prior to that based on the prototype and also the prior generation of product that NextGen had. But AMD's K5 and K6 were in big trouble. So I think it was in October of 1995 that AMD announced the acquisition of NextGen, and I think it closed in either late 1995 or early 1996. But then, we came out with a competitive product, and I think over the life of that product, it probably did $3 to $4 billion in revenue. But it was, competing against Intel at that time was like running on a treadmill constantly, and there was no rest. It was like they were, you know, they were the technology leader in both manufacturing ICs as well as processor, and so it was just a serious treadmill without any rest. So,
Yeah,
but
I
it
can
was.
only
I
imagine.
have to say that the next gen AMD experience was perhaps um, sort of I would consider that the highlight of my operating career. I really enjoyed
Uh,
that
uh,
journey.
I must, in fact, I was going to ask you about that. You were named an AMD fellow during the K6 era. What does earning that kind of recognition inside of a company like AMD actually require, and what did it change for you?
Well, obviously it brought credibility and respect. I was considered a really strong and smart engineer, um, and I don't remember the exact process of becoming an AMD fellow, but I had to have you know, a certain track record and also some strong supporters within the company to nominate me. And then there's a committee that reviews what you've achieved, and they decide if you're worthy of becoming a fellow. So, yeah, there were two levels of fellow at AMD. One was just a regular fellow, which is what I got, and then there's a senior fellow. I don't know if that's still how they rank it, but the senior fellow is even a higher uh, sort of a higher recognition of your achievements and maybe your brilliance or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, either way, it's pretty impressive. Before you were an investor, almost, you were an operator through six startups, right? Four wins and two that failed. So, what
You're
what did
right.
the two failures teach you that maybe the wins never could?
Yeah. Well, the first failure taught me that you can design a commercially viable product, but if you don't have a real market for it, then it's not going to work. And that's actually what happened. It was a company called Terra Microsystems. We were doing at that time. This was around 1989, and Spark systems were taking off at the time, and we were doing just like at the time there were companies doing x86 compatible chipsets to work with the Intel processors, we were doing Spark compatible chipsets. The only problem was the Spark compatible market never took off. You either were able to sell to Sun Microsystems, and if you didn't get that account, you were dead. So Sun didn't buy from us, and we're actually Sequoia Capital backed company, and yeah, after 2 years, I think nobody was willing to step up and put more money into the company, so pulled the plug. So obviously that was a lesson that, unless there's a clear buyer at the end, or buyers in this case, it was only unfortunately one buyer, that we probably shouldn't go in that direction. Yeah.
And looking back at that whole arc, right, from National Semiconductor to Redback to Agami, like what threads connect the engineer you were then to the investor you became?
Well, I mean, working at startups, I was always interested in the process of building a company. I got interested in the financing side. Obviously, I received, as an early employee or as a founder, I received shares in the company. And I wanted to really understand what that meant, right? And so,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
started researching, what it takes to actually go from um, an early startup to an established company, and in terms of the financing side. And obviously, as part of my career working at startups, I also helped on the fundraising side, in particular the last startup where I was one of the founders. But yeah, so having been interested in that, having received also the financial rewards for exits that I did have as an operator, which all I would classify them as good exits. I mean, one was what you would call perhaps an outlier exit, but yeah, they were all very good. I became interested in the investor side of the story, and yeah, having been on the operator side and part of the process of building a company, I wanted to maybe deploy some of my capital into startups where I wasn't involved as an operator. And part of it was wanting, I guess the way I would describe it, when I left my last operating role, I wasn't planning on becoming a full-time angel and venture investor, but I really still wanted to be part of the startup ecosystem. And since I wasn't going to start a new company myself at that point, I decided to focus on the investor side, and that allowed me to continue to be active in the startup ecosystem in the Bay Area, which is one of the most active startup ecosystems in the world. And it was very intellectually stimulating in terms of being at the intersection of frontier and innovation and business and commercialization, and getting the opportunity to meet all these great entrepreneurs that really smart, many much smarter than I am, as well as also collaborating with other investors, other really smart investors, and so that whole process keeps me really engaged, as well as I feel that I am contributing back to an ecosystem where I sort of grew up in. And one of the sad things about entrepreneurship, or maybe not, sad isn't the right word, is that there's a lot of really smart entrepreneurs that start companies, but unfortunately, 9 out of 10 are going to fail. So still, we're in an era now where I think the number of startups spinning up per day is like the most it's ever been, and so it's an interesting time for sure. But again, it's really really hard to build a company, and it's even though it might be easier today than it was when I started, in my startup career, um, it's still hard to get a company to commercial success and to an exit. So hopefully
You've now got
that was kind of a long answer, but sorry about that.
yeah, that's okay. I was gonna say you've now got a portfolio of north of 150 companies, right? So was there a specific early
I,
bet? Oh, sorry.
actually, I've invested in over 300 companies. I
Oh,
think
wow.
as far as active, I would say a good number have been written off. A good number of delivered exits. There's a subset that have delivered really good exits. Um, and I've taken the returns and deployed a lot of them back into new startups. And I'm still actively investing both through Sandal Angels and another group, Silicon Catalyst Angels, as well as doing direct investing myself outside the groups. So
Good for you. That's very inspiring. So I was gonna say, was there a specific early bet, a win or a miss that kind of like rewired how you evaluate founders and teams?
well, I mean, it was a learning experience. I started actually investing on my own and made a ton of mistakes. I think joining a group like Sandal Angels really helped me sort of focus on what to look for. But I would say that, you know, pretty early on realized that a bet is on a startup is usually a bet on the founding team. So you really have to get an understanding of the founding team's background. If it's more than one founder, have they worked together before? Are they complementary in skill set? Do they get along? Um, if it's a solo founder, you don't have to worry about them getting along with anybody, but with a co-founder. But solo founder can be a bit of a lonely journey as well. So obviously, founding team, I think is perhaps, in my opinion, the most important element. And also these days, and this is something that I've learned again from experience. If you have a founding team that is not fully committed to the mission and is not able to weather the type of hardship that you will encounter in building a company, because you will encounter that, they will bail and move on to the next opportunity, which yeah, I mean, that can be a disappointment when somebody just says, "Oh, I give up." That said, sometimes it makes sense to give up after you've spent a lot of time. Yeah. Also, sometimes I see profiles of entrepreneurs that claim they've had 6 exits and they're only 30 years old, and that's actually typically a red flag for me, because that means they haven't really spent that much time at any one company, and the exits couldn't have been that great. Uh, so, so yeah, definitely look for entrepreneurs that are willing to build for a while. So.
A lot of investors talk about pattern recognition. As an engineer who actually, shipped chips, how does your technical eye change what you see in a deal that, maybe a pure finance person would miss?
Well, obviously, you can dig into the technology, but most of us as investors, we do rely on experts. So I think even if you take a VC that has finance background, and if they're certainly looking at a deep tech company, they are going to find the right people to evaluate the technology. I think that's standard practice. And as an angel group and as an angel, so, if I have background in the specific tech that the company has, I will try and evaluate it myself. But a lot of times also we'll refer to experts either within our group or even experts outside the group that are willing to give us feedback on the technology. And the technology is just one component of startup success, right? There's a lot more to success than just having great technology.
And Amos, was there a point where your worldview on where value gets created in tech started to shift, like where you stopped kind of believing the old story and started believing in a new one?
Oh well, I'm constantly following what's happening in the VC ecosystem, and I wouldn't say that really the story has changed. Yeah, it has changed, but still, the bottom line is if you build good products, if you start a company, build a good product that customers want, good things will happen. And if you grow the revenue of the company, at the same time, as far as valuations of companies, there's been a steady climb, both from early stage to later stage. And I think today we're looking at valuation inflation. So if you look at companies going to YC, they may have minimal revenue or maybe not even an MVP, and they'll be asking for valuation caps on safes of 30 to 40 million. Same, you can see that in some of the other accelerators. And then there's also these, these, I guess you could call them talent companies that are raising seed rounds at multi-billion-dollar valuations. They'll raise $1 billion or $2 billion at a 10 billion valuation. So there's only so many trillion-dollar companies that can get built, I think. So I think there's going to be a good amount of fallout in those types of valuations. But so I think that's been perhaps one of the biggest changes over the last, I'd say, 7, 8, 9 years in terms of just looking at venture and how you invest, because your entry point, it matters a lot in terms of your final return. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Can you so you mentioned you're a board director at Sandhill Angels, and you're also deeply involved with Silicon Catalyst. Can you walk me through what your kind of like day to day actually looks like right now, and like where your energy goes?
well, I have a sort of a role at Sandhill Angels where I'm part of a team that helps keep track of all of our investments. So I would say currently I fill sort of a portfolio management role with the group. I've also sourced a lot of deals for the group and maintain sort of communication channels with our partners, because we also have partners like Angels in New York and a bunch of VC firms we work with. But my typical day consists of either specific work for Sandal Angels, specific work for Silicon Catalyst Angels, and meetings with entrepreneurs. Typically 2 or 3 times a day, I'll meet with entrepreneurs and find out what they're doing, see if there's any um, if it's something that might fit, either Sandal Angels or Silicon Catalyst Angels. Silicon Catalyst Angels is sector specific, so really focus on semiconductor investments or semiconductor related. Um, so, uh, you know, most of the entrepreneurs I meet with are actually more like um, uh, appropriate for Sandal Angels, just because there are a lot more non-semiconductor companies. So, so yeah, that's a typical day for me. And yeah, I also have a lot of personal activities that I do, and I like to travel, so I take off every once in a while and go somewhere. So
Cool.
yeah.
So I guess Silicon Catalyst, right, exists because building a chip company is brutally capital intensive and slow. What's the core problem you're trying to solve for semiconductor founders that the normal venture world just isn't built for?
Yeah, so actually there's Silicon Catalyst, the incubator, I think, which was started around 2014 or 2015. Um, and the mission of the incubator at that point, it was actually started at a time where semiconductors were out of favor, right? So the mission was actually to create an organization that would support the semiconductor startup world, and as an accelerator or an incubator of sorts, uh, and um, either either financial support or in-kind support, like the tools that a semiconductor company needs to design and develop and bring a product to market. So that's sort of the history of Silicon Catalyst, the incubator. Um, in 2019, and I became an advisor to the incubator, and actually the, the incubator has a very large ecosystem of advisors that are semiconductor veterans, and I was one of them. And in 2019, we realized, well, hey, we've got this whole ecosystem. Many of the advisors are actually interested in investing in startups, but specifically in semiconductor startups, not your sort of uh, whatever's the fad in terms of new startups. They specifically want semiconductors, and so we said let's start an angel investor group that is focused on semiconductor products. And so that's how the origin of Silicon Catalyst Angels came into being. And it's closely affiliated with the incubator, although it is an independent organization, and it runs independently. But we do end up, in terms of one of our major sources of deals, are incubator companies themselves, where becoming part of the incubator allows some level of vetting. Then, of course, they make progress um, as they work at the incubator, and so we try to focus on the most promising semiconductor companies in the incubator, and the breakout ones. And so that's sort of the major deal sourcing of um, opportunity for us. But we also look at companies outside the incubator, and we rely on our members to source those if they see any interesting opportunity. that they think the group would be interested in. They bring it to the board of directors, and the board pre-screens the companies and decides whether it's something the members would be interested in. Um, by their nature, the majority of these companies are deep tech companies and require a lot of capital to get to commercial product. And so, a combination of the incubator with the angel group that's affiliated with the incubator, and there's also a venture capital fund that's separate from the angel group that is affiliated with the incubator. That creates an ecosystem where you can help semiconductor startups get off the ground. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years to get to a prototype product. And so having that supportive environment is sort of a way to make sure these companies get started and they have the right support.
So we're living through kind of this like AI super cycle right now, right? Where the whole story runs on silicon. From where you sit, what's the opportunity most investors are still sleeping on in hardware?
Meaning not recognizing? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gee, I wish I had an answer to that question, Sunny. Then I would make sure that we started a company. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. Sorry.
Okay. Amos, you've also talked about companies making chip design as accessible as vibe coding. How real is that? And what does it unlock if the barrier to designing silicon actually collapses?
Well, I mean, all the major EDA companies like Synopsys and Cadence are all integrating AI into their tools. So, but there are a bunch of startups that are, I would call them AI native startups that are trying to automate various parts of the process. And I think that's an interesting opportunity, and perhaps it's the future. There's, I think, one really well-funded company, I think, called Recursive AI, that came out of Google. And I think they're trying to automate the process. Yeah, I mean, they're an interesting company. Whether what they're trying to do is achievable or not, we shall see. But yeah, there's other companies that are focusing on various parts, whether it's automating total automation of layout or verification. And yeah, I think it's something that might actually reduce the cycle times, in terms of taking an idea all the way to an initial prototype and commercial product after that. So I think it's really great for the industry, and I'm really hoping these companies are successful. So.
Hey, Amos, when you're deciding to back a deep tech team today, like what are the 2 or 3 things that you have to kind of see before you lean in?
Yeah, well, I have to be convinced first that the founding team is strong. Second, that there is a real market for what they're doing, and that their timing in terms of a commercial product would still be relevant. That they, like we said, it takes a long time to get to a commercial product with semis. So need to make sure that whatever they're shooting for isn't obsolete by the time they get there. Yeah, and that there's a good market. I'd also like to see some skill set in the founding team that is commercially oriented. So being like having an academic, a couple founders come out of academia, might be a challenge. Although there's certainly I've experienced examples where we've had founders like that are very commercially oriented. But yeah, so look for a really strong founding team, really good technology, commercially oriented idea, and a really interesting market that is meaningful. At the end of the day, as angels, I would say we're not every investment is looking for the multi-billion-dollar outcome. For us, if we get in early enough and at a low enough valuation, a few $100 million outcome could be very nice. Yeah, I mean, if every investment I made resulted just in a 5 to 10x multiple, I think I would be pretty happy. Unfortunately, most investments you make fail. So
You don't need
that's
too many wins, do you?
yeah,
I
yeah.
said, I
Well,
said you don't need you don't need too many wins to make up for it, though.
right, yeah. If you get some really strong wins, they'll make up for your losses as well as provide a really good profit. But yeah, this is it's not for the faint of heart, really. If you're going to be doing a lot of angel investing and you're making bets, sometimes you're making bets on moonshots. You have to be willing to experience the losses as well and play the long game. Yeah.
How much? This is so fascinating. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned you guys put a little bit of money through Gangels into Uno Coin as well. So you even had a hand
Yeah.
in the Indian, ecosystem being built out.
Yeah.
Look out,
Actually, I want to. We through a partner of ours, Tribe Capital, we invested in Rocket Ship, which you probably heard of. It just went public on the Indian stock market at $1 billion valuation. So, but I invested personally through Gangels and Unicoin,
good,
which
cool.
is a company you experienced, right?
Yes. So I almost look out 5 to 10 years. Like, well, what does the semiconductor, landscape look like to you, and where do you where do you want your kind of fingerprints to be on it?
Well, ideally, I mean, I'm an investor in some promising semiconductor companies, so I'd like to see the semiconductor industry continue to grow. I think it's on a really strong growth trajectory, and I'm sure we'll have a lull at some point, and then a resurgence after that. So I'm looking for some of the companies I've invested in to do really well and produce really great outcomes. And then your guess is as good as mine as where things will go in 5 to 10 years. I mean, who would have imagined we would be here now 5 years ago, right?
Not me.
Yeah.
But
So
I'm here for it, and I'm quite excited and delighted by all the amazing advancements, and I mean, just the fact that you can be sitting in Silicon Valley. I'm in Toronto, and we're able to talk and share with 35 people watching live. I mean, this is super
oh,
cool.
really? We've got an audience, huh?
Yeah. This one's been streaming, and quite a few people are listening. So appreciate all of you. Amos, where do people learn more about the syndicate, the network, and then also about yourself?
Yeah, well, obviously you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and mention that you heard this conversation. Um, as far as you know, uh, interest in like Sandal Angels and doing angel investing with the group, you can become a member. There's a process for both groups. It's pretty straightforward, but you would reach out to one of the members and let them know. You can reach out on LinkedIn or you can reach out to me directly if you want to share my email. But
Do,
yeah,
do you do you want me to share it, or is that okay, or do you want to?
yeah, it's okay. You can share it.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and so we're always happy to bring on new members in both groups. If you're more of a generalist, Sandal Angels would be the better group for you. If you're if you specifically want to invest in semiconductor companies, then Silicon Catalyst Angels would be a great group to join. So.
People don't have to live in Silicon Valley, right? They can be anywhere to join your network, or do
Yeah,
they have to
yeah.
live? Okay.
No, you don't have to be. In fact, at San Diego Angels, the majority of our folks are in the Bay Area, but we have folks on the East Coast, maybe a couple in Europe, and maybe one or two in South America. But yeah, you can be anywhere really. Our activities and meetings are either hybrid, meaning they're either in person plus online, or they're completely virtual as well. So, and the same applies for Silicon Catalyst Angels. Yeah.
Okay, great. Amos, thank you so much. Wow, a lot of people listening. Thank you all again for I really appreciate all of you for tuning in. Amos, you're such a great guest. I learned a lot from you, and wow, what a story you have. I want to be like you when I grow up. Let's put it that way. Okay, with that said, I'm going to bring this
Yeah.
one to an end.
Well,
And
yeah,
I'll
thanks for having me, and yeah, enjoy the
yeah.
rest of your Thursday. Okay.
Yes, Amos, hang out for 1 minute. I'm just going to bring this stream to an end. I'll see you in 30
Okay.
seconds.